me today, Owen. Say hi, Owen.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about astronomy. So, Owen, let me just start off by asking you, how did you find astronomy? How did you find out about astronomy in the first place?
Well, uh, the first time that I really got into astronomy was probably 2 years ago. I was on a trip to Australia back in 2019, and if anybody has been to Australia, you would know that the night sky in a non-light polluted area is absolutely stunning. You could see the arch of the Milky Way curve over you, and there were so many stars in the night sky that it made the entirety of the heavens seem to glow. So that's why if you check my WhatsApp profile, uh, I've got a saying that the darker the skies, the more they're filled with light. It's just to reflect the situation that if the entire sky is filled with stars, it will be brighter than what you would expect normally. So yeah, that's so ever since from that trip, I've been doing some observational astronomy at home, this past year, and that has been my hobby ever since.
That's. I just want to ask you, for anyone who's interested in astronomy, are there any places you recommend for them to go, to take photographs in Hong Kong?
Well, so most people, if when they say they want to get into astronomy, because astrophotography, as we say, is not a cheap hobby. Uh, if you want to have observational astronomy in Hong Kong, of course, the darker the site, the better. So some sites in Hong Kong I would recommend would be Clearwater Bay. Clearwater Bay is relatively accessible. Another would be Plover Cove Dam, Plover Cove Reservoir. That place also boasts a number of dark site spots. Um, and for those living in Hong Kong Island, the beaches of Tai Long Wan would be a good choice as well. You can actually see the Milky Way during the summer if conditions are right.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about. We were talking about the eclipse in the previous talk, and I just wanted to ask you, what did you how to say this? What did you think of the eclipse that occurred last year in Hong Kong, and what did you use to take that photograph specifically?
Well, a solar eclipse is definitely nothing to not be amazed at. Simply put, it is a solar eclipse. Although it happens regularly, it might not happen in an area you live in for thousands of years. So having a near perfect eclipse over Hong Kong was definitely something that most people will only get to see in their lifetime. So for me, viewing the eclipse, it viewing the eclipse was not just a visual. You don't just get that joy from visual senses alone. You can also actually feel the surroundings of the environment change because of how the moon shadow is going over the surface of the earth, and the temperature
Yeah, I
tends to,
remember the. Sorry,
yeah,
I just remember that the sky was. I remember, apart from the sky being a little darker, of course. I remember it was also a little cold, like not cold
yeah,
enough to be
yeah,
getting
that
out your pockets or like
yeah, you would
like right
feel
now. But
you would
like,
feel that sense of chill as if the sun were setting during a sunset, correct? Uh, yeah, but some part of you knows that this is not something that is ordinary because it's still in the middle of noon. So having your senses feel conflicted with one another is something that the eclipse can truly bring to you, which is something that which I believe is why many people still go after these events. And so for how I took the eclipse is actually nothing special. It's just I just use a simple phone camera strapped onto my telescope to which would take photos at regular intervals. Yeah.
um, yeah, I feel like a lot of people. I feel like when people think of astronomy, we always think of like things like apart from the stars, we also have eclipses. But I also wanted to note that earlier on there was a great conjunction. Is it conjunction?
Yep,
I'm
conjunction.
pronouncing that right.
Conjunction is basically
Conjunction.
when two objects come
Yeah,
into
and
close proximity.
Okay, and it was between Jupiter and Saturn, right?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on that, and what did you do? What was your experience, basically?
Well, during the what we call the pulse, which is when the two objects are in the closest approach to one another, the sky was cloudy. That didn't surprise me at all. Somehow, but yeah, 5 days later, Jupiter and Saturn were still favorably positioned, and looking at them through a telescope, in such close proximity, is truly a sight to behold. It's not very often that you get to see two planets within the same field of view. Usually if you gaze at a planet, it's already stunning enough. You could see surface features, if they have rings, or perhaps even some sort of weather patterns on them. But having two appear at the same time is basically double the fun. So, seeing the Great Conjunction, as most people call it, was definitely quote unquote once in a lifetime. It was definitely an out of this world experience.
Yeah, I also wanted to note that in the previous talk, we were also talking about how signs of life, I believe you said it was some type of phosphate, some type of gas.
Phosphine, yeah.
That was found on Venus that kind of like potentially signaled that there was the existence of life on that planet. I wanted to ask you, what were your exact thoughts on that, and do you actually believe that we will find life on Venus?
That is a question that still requires some hefty empirical evidence to back it. So, life on Venus has long been thought to be impossible. If you have heard of Venus, it's considered to be a literal hell. The surface pressure on Venus is 90 times that on Earth, and is actually the hottest planet in the solar system, even hotter than little Mercury, who is closer to the sun. So, finding signs of phosphine in the atmosphere was definitely not something that you expect from Venus. Some people have hypothesized that to be the result of volcanism on Venus, which has been observed by multiple missions. But there's no way to explain the massive concentration of phosphine in the atmosphere with our current understanding without life. The original papers state that the original values of the original papers has phosphine at a remarkably high level, but other studies about the paper have since proven that that number is about, if I remember correctly, 7 times lower. It's still not a small number, but it's significantly lower. So the general consensus whether there's life on Venus is that we don't know, but hopefully, preferably August this year, we will get confirmation from Bepi Colombo, which is a satellite that is on its way to Mercury. It will fly by Venus in August and will try to detect whether there's phosphine on Venus. So yeah, it's quite an interesting discovery waiting confirmation, so stay tuned.
Sorry, something that something just dropped over here.
Yeah, it's okay, it's okay.
Sorry for the delay. I just wanted to ask about, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
About space agencies. We were talking about that. And I was wondering, was that, I remember that there are actually a lot more countries that have space agencies in the world. Like, of course, when we think of space agencies, we think of US with NASA, and the European Union has a collective one, and Japan has its own. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot more space agencies there that, okay, most of them are defunct. But I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on that? Like, those space agencies.
Defunct. I wouldn't say defunct. They certainly, especially NASA, because the whole reason why NASA was founded in the first place was to win the Soviets in the Cold War, according to my knowledge. But yeah, funding has certainly dropped. If I remember correctly, it's about 0.5% of taxpayer dollars. But I wouldn't say defunct, because there still have been multiple missions to other worlds since the fall of the Soviet Union. So for example, Cassini. Cassini was a probe that went to Saturn and orbited it for 13 years, I believe. Another one was New Horizons, launched in 2004. I believe it was a NASA probe on its way to Pluto. It flew by in 2015. And don't forget Juno, another mission that is currently orbiting Jupiter to study its atmosphere and magnetosphere. So I wouldn't say defunct at all. There's still plenty of missions to come. It's definitely not as much funding as during the Apollo missions, but definitely not decrepit. There's still money flowing into it, but not as much as most scientist fans like me would like.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about like the UAE actually has its own space agency, and they've actually sent the mission to Mars, I believe.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And I just wanted to just move on to the topic. And I remember I was watching this video that discussed what if the moon was green, as in it had living ecosystem with flora and fauna, with basically counted animals. I just want to ask you, what do you think the ramifications of a hypothetical green moon would look like?
Well, the moon has always been an important part of human culture. Fun fact: the one of the 7 days of the week, which I believe it's Monday. Monday is actually named after the moon by the ancient Greeks, I believe. But yes, having a moon that has an ecosystem on it would change how we perceive life in the universe. Humans may not have developed so egocentric because there's another example of life on the moon. But given how people deal with colonism, if that's the right word, yes, we all know what Columbus did to the Native Americans back in the, I believe it was the 18th century, right? Yeah, but when Columbus quote unquote discovered America, you know what he did to we all know what he did to the Native Americans: exploitation, slavery, deportation, blah blah blah, all that jazz.
We all know what most explorers did.
Yes. So whenever we discover a new uncharted territory, we ransack that place of resources, and we basically exploit whatever the inhabitants have. So, in a world where human culture has developed with knowing the fact that there's life on another world other than Earth, maybe we will not be so cruel, but the chances of us destroying the moon's inhabitants would be quite high, I believe, as with how Columbus did with the Native Americans or every single colonist in history. It would certainly not be good news for the lunatics.
How about lunatics? And my whole time about how you told me a joke of how
it's a terrible joke.
People are supposed to know how to say this. Sentient just anything from Martians, and you said that anything from the moon, where it's like lunar.
Yeah.
Lunatics.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. So.
Yeah. Just wanted to ask you, just to rewind this back to let's relate this back to Hong Kong, which we did in the first question. I just wanted to ask about is there like a specific favorite spot that you like to go to take like photographs, or is it kind of like you have like a diverse list of spots that you go depending on the season?
Well, I definitely don't choose as many spots as I did in my early days. Early days was just 2 years. I'm not a nomad, man. So, my current favorite spot under absolute perfect conditions would be Tai Ao Mun kite flying area, which is in Clearwater Bay. However, I found recently that there's a lot of fishing boats in the area, which goddamn is ridiculous, man. They use big ass strobe lights that are brighter than the full moon, which I'm not even exaggerating. It's insane. But in general, if there are no fishing boats and if it's after 11 p.m., Clearwater Bay is incredibly beautiful. Some other spots, as I've mentioned before, would be Tai Long Wan in Hong Kong near Tai O. Another would be, yes, as I've said, Plover Cove Reservoir. These are the current spots that I have visited. I believe I visited Pak Tam Chung once, but that spot was good as well. But it's not really adequate for casual sky gazing. But just in general, go to Sai Kung. There's lots of dark sky spots.
Yeah, I feel like Taekwondo is like a lot of people consider Hong Kong's like backyard even. I feel like Hong Kong we always like the world kind of sees it as this city, this crowded city with like 7 million people. And while Hong Kong is crowded, but 75% of it is it's
Rural.
nature and you can very
Yeah.
much still see the stars there. And I'm not saying Hong Kong like even there in those areas Hong Kong has like amazing views of the stars, but like they are pretty cool. I remember going on a sunrise hike in Mount Parker, and even though that's like close to the city, you can still very much see the stars. When you
God,
go
that
higher.
must be an awesome experience. That must have been an awesome experience.
Except I was very tired. And,
Yeah, but would you rather get tired because you have to rush for some arbitrary deadline for transport, or would you rather tire yourself out to be in awe of the cosmos? That's something that.
What the cosmos and the sunrise. The sunrise.
Yes, the sunrise.
Yeah.
And speaking of which,
But-
I believe we all remember on the first day of 2021, there was a bunch of people going to Tai Mo Shan to see the first sunrise of 2021, which is kind of funny in my opinion. Lots of people going there illegally camping, because technically you cannot camp in any non-designated camping area.
Yeah, I just I remember when I was I've been to Australia before, but we never saw the stars.
Uh-huh.
But when I was in, I believe Bosnia. I was in a town called Mostar. I don't know if you heard of it. But it's
I
basically this-
haven't, unfortunately. Yep. Continue.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. It's not really known for its stars, but I feel like the fact that it's kind of like a country town, like a very small town. I mean, it's a little touristy, like as touristy as you can get in Bosnia, apart from the capital. But I don't know, you just see the stars. Like it's just a sharp contrast from Hong Kong, man. Like even comparing to like areas like Saigon, as you mentioned, it's still very much stark contrast based on how small Hong Kong is.
Yes. But even despite its small size, there's still certain spots, although they're not as good. I still really recommend anybody with an excitement to discover the cosmos, or with free time to go to some of these rural areas to take a good look at the stars, because who knows, maybe how you would decide to live your life would change because of that. It certainly changed mine.
I just want to ask you another question. Have you ever seen a real shooting star in Hong Kong?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I've seen numerous shooting stars both in Australia and in Hong Kong. And
Okay.
you might not expect where I've seen one in Hong Kong, because you would expect that despite all the light pollution. I remember seeing a shooting star from smack dab in the middle of Ho Man Tin. It was extremely bright. Shooting stars
How
are
the fuck did that happen?
no idea. I just guess some sort of debris decided to have a bad day and crash into the Earth's atmosphere. yeah, but
It's like, hey,
that's definitely not something that you see every day.
yup. I also just want to ask another question. So about the Space Museum, I just feel like a lot of people say it's very outdated. Do you believe that it's very outdated? Like, it
Well-
has that very 80s, very like kind of like.
Whether the current exhibits in the Space Museum are outdated, I cannot make a objective assertion, because The last time was at the Space Museum versus the last time any of the exhibits were updated. There was a gap of, I would say, at least 7 years. So it's impossible for me to ascertain whether the exhibits are outdated. But from my recent visits, I would say that they are pretty spot on. They're much more interesting. But I wouldn't say that any of them are outdated. It's just that it's very limited. It's not a museum you spend a lot of time in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Not as much time as the
I remember
science
when.
museum.
Sorry. You go ahead. You go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I remember when I was a kid, like Space Museum, like I remember having like memories of going to the main gallery in history and science museums, but like Space Museum, like the only thing you remember is the theater, like not the exhibits. Like,
Yes.
a lot of people, it's kind of like the lame duck. Like it's not really very interesting. It really isn't. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people like it's really just kind of there.
It's just a dome.
I don't know.
I remember getting motion sickness from from watching a movie inside that auditorium. It's somehow like the curvature of the dome with a screen projector on it. It does not work for me. It just gave me nausea.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, some people do get that. So yeah.
And this
But
is from
somebody,
a guy who doesn't get seasick.
oh yeah.
It's insane.
So going back to just going back to astronomy, I just wanted to ask about if it turned like a lot of people say that the moon Titan, which is the moon that orbits Saturn, do you believe that it has life, or do you believe that it's a bit too unlikely?
We already have proof. It's Thanos. Just kidding.
Oh shit! I just realized.
It's just kidding. Yeah, if I remember correctly, the Titan in the comic books in the Marvel comic books was actually a moon of Saturn, but I don't believe the one in the MCU is actually Saturn's moon. Yeah, but
it's not.
It's hard to, given our current understanding of biology. Titan has a very different environment from Earth. It has if I remember correctly, it has an atmosphere made of methane, and it has methane lakes. It's so cold on Titan that there are cryovolcanoes erupting liquid methane and ethane. So whatever life is on Titan, it will be very different from Earth. It will have completely different biology from us. We simply do not know enough about life because basically every single organism on Earth, if you believe in the evolutionary model of Darwin, shares the same genetic code. They share at least something in common with each other. So whatever life is it is on Titan, we simply don't know anything to make any meaningful speculation about what it might be or how it might function. It's basically like asking.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
a good analogy would be it's basically asking a squirrel. It's basically asking a squirrel how to drive a car. We're just too different to understand currently with our current knowledge.
I mean, hypothetically, you don't have to say what kind of car it is, but that's beside the point. We're gonna start rounding up It's gonna be like the last part of the project.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
We're gonna start rounding up. Just want to ask you, was there when you were young, was there any particular episode that maybe led you to that incident in 2019 to have an interest in astronomy, or did it just come in very naturally?
It's very spontaneous, I would say. Once you have truly exposed yourself to the stars, that sort of ecstasy is that the word? Ecstasy. It just comes out of nowhere. So before my trip to Australia, I was just a general DSE student, just wanting to enroll in the 3 main core subjects of science with no real aspirations. And I thought to myself, hey, I'm going to Australia, to the countryside. Maybe I'll see the stars for a chance. So I decided to grab my Stars and Planets stargazing book and took that as an opportunity to view the stars. And the moment I walked out the night, into the night, was the moment that I realized that this is what I truly love. It's impossible to annotate and describe it in words, because how else can you describe the grandeur of the cosmos without looking at it for yourself? Imagine using your eyes and seeing thousands of lights light up the entire sky, brighter than even the skies in Hong Kong, except that the night is not illuminated by artificial lamps or the headlights of cars. It's just that there are so many stars that the entire night sky glows with a hue of blue. That's something that is enough to change the course of one's life.
Yeah, I feel like space really makes us feel how, not really unimportant, but like how minuscule our position in the universe is. Like, I feel like just comparing ourselves to like the sun and Jupiter's, like we always feel very, very small. But like comparing all that to like the rest of the galaxy, it's pretty impressive. And that's just our galaxy. Like
It's all Inception. It's all Inception.
Yeah.
But something to note is that when you look up at the universe, it's okay to feel small.
Yeah.
But just know that even though you are small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things, don't forget that you have the opportunity to live in this universe, and you have the ability to marvel at all of its wonders. That is one step towards ditching your ego, I believe, and accepting that I am extremely fortunate to be living in this era and to be able to gasp at how beautiful our cosmos is. Well, one could say that it is a religious way of thinking, but I would say it's just how some people, it's just a way of thinking. Yeah, even though I'm not religious.
Yeah. I remember when just the seeing the space, like it was kind of like, it's only very eye opening, especially if you live in the city. Like, I'm not saying it's not eye opening if you live in a place like the countryside, but like having lived in Hong Kong a lot, and just like pollution is pretty much every night.
Which is a shame, really. It's a shame.
I mentioned this in the last episode a little bit.
Yeah.
Like the shock of going to somewhere very rural, like just seeing like after dark, it just becomes dark. Like not like Hong Kong where it's dark, but you can at least it's still like illuminated by artificial lights. But like it's like, but in like a countryside,
you get one step closer to
the
You get one step closer to the universe.
That is correct.
It is absolutely stunning.
That sums up what we want, or what I want to say. So yeah, I just want to thank you again, Owen, for coming onto this podcast.
It's been a pleasure.
And I just want to wish everyone a very it's like we're recording this at night. I just want to record this. I just want to tell everyone a very good night and
stay safe. Wash your hands. Wear a mask.
That is very correct. And also remember social distance. Like, don't go on unless necessary. As such, I'll be seeing you in the next episode, hopefully. And goodbye.
Bye.
Did you stop recording?